And through the drifts the snowy cliffs did send a dismal sheen, nor shapes of men nor beasts we ken, the ice was all between. I'm All of Ice Cream, and this is in time for another Magic the Gathering Top 10. This week's Top 10 is Top 10 Worst Magic the Gathering Sets. I'm just going to list them in chronological order. Magic the Gathering's had some good years, and good sets and bad sets. The problem with the last half of 2019 is it's shaking a lot of people's feelings. Southern Olive says, December 13th, what he's worried about is all the bannings we've had since Throne of Eldraine. People are getting burned out on the idea of Standard and are not even going to come back even if Theros is Standard, and he's worried that there's some long-term damage with Magic the Gathering. Well, I'll show you some sets that did some long-term Magic the Gathering damage and how Wizards dealt with it and how we went through it. So without further ado, let me go with number 10, Legends. Legends has a huge problem with Magic the Gathering because it was 310 cards in this set. Antiquities had 100 cards and Arabian Nights had 92 cards. So to shuffle 310 cards in the factory and put them all in the packs was impossible. Legends was unsorted into like Legends A and Legends B. And if you got a Legends A box, it wouldn't have cards in your Legends B box. And if you had a Legends B box, there wasn't cards in the Legends A box. And there was no way you could really tell without opening a couple of packs which kind of Legends set you could be. So it's actually like two sets with the exact same packs and the exact same box. And you could have a box where you get 3 mana drains, another box where you get like 0 mana drains. And it wasn't like, oh, like you got statistically unlucky. Like, no, it was like physically impossible. If you opened up a couple of packs of a box of Legends, you actually knew that it was impossible to get some of the cards in Legends. They eventually learned from the mistake and ended up shuffling a little bit better. They had a couple of smaller sets after that. And even with sets as big as Legends, they solved their mistakes. And the low printing run with Legends, they fixed it by having another set called Chronicles. Another thing they did with Legends is they had a lot of Italian Legends packs. They had some set called Renaissance, where they had like 4 different languages and 4 different sets, like the Dark and Legends. And they would just put different languages into each one. So if you see like a lot of like Italian Legends on eBay, it's just like a lot of like boxes that just didn't get mailed overseas. And so there's a couple of weird cards out there. The sad part about Legends is it was like the set where Nicol Bolas came out. And Nicol Bolas, I remember opening him up, and he was like $18 for Black Border. And if you got him in Chronicles, he was like $3 or $4 in Chronicles, and he was white bordered. Here's the difference. And so you had like your collectability of your black bordered Nicol Bolas is kind of ruined. It's kind of like you should just sell your black bordered Nicol Bolas and just buy 4 Chronicles white bordered Nicol Bolases instead. Eventually, Magic the Gathering ended up having a promise called the Reserved List, and stated that they really wouldn't print any cards sets like Chronicles ever again to fix their mistakes. Number 9, Fallen Empires. Fallen Empires, I remember buying for like $2 a pack. The cool part about these days was Magic the Gathering packs were $2.95 a pack, and with a Walden Books card, you could get 15% off your purchases at Walden Books. So you could buy like a pack of Magic cards at Walden Books. 15% off of $2.95 is $2.50. That was a great buy. Fallen Empires you could get for like $2 a pack, and that was incredible. And as the weeks passed, I recognized the price of Fallen Empires packs are going down to like $1.50. You could buy a couple more, and $1.25. You could buy more. And finally, at the end, like that sale, like in the mall, Fallen Empire packs were $1. So Magic the Gathering just printed Fallen Empires cards as much as they could. They were tired of just running out of Legends. They instantly ran out of Alpha. And with Legends packs being sold for $6, like, they were just tired of the cards being run out. So they just printed Fallen Empires for Oblivion. Unfortunately, if you have a lot of Fallen Empires, your Hymn to Turoks aren't worth much. And Hymn to Turok is one of the most powerful cards in Magic the Gathering. The best part about Fallen Empires was the Thralls. I wish I just bought like 200 packs of Fallen Empires, like whatever it took just to get 4 Thrall champions so I could build a Thrall deck, because that would have been pretty cool. Unfortunately, Thralls didn't get much love. There was like a Thrall Surgeon, I think in the Wrath cycle, and then like a couple of Treasurer Thralls in Ravnica and stuff. Their Thralls never actually got a real tribe, and Thrall Champion wasn't very good as a champion, or as a lord. Number 8 is Homelands. Homelands was the set that got me to quit Magic the Gathering for like a year. It was far underpowered. The best card in was probably Joven's Ferrets. Joven's Ferrets is a card that gives +0/+2 until end of turn if it's declared as an attacker, and it gives creatures that block it like a wall of dust effect. So a 1/3 for 1 mana was the best card, and the most expensive card from Homelands was Baron Singer. And Baron Singer is an 8 mana 5/5. It's not even very good. It ends up being like a $4 card, and it's the most priciest card from Homelands. There's no love for the Baron. This was a card like in the very first reanimation decks when there was Animate Dead or Dance of the Dead. Sorry, Dance of the Dead. Reanimating creatures like Baron Singer was really cool back in the day. So getting 8 mana creature that you only paid 2 mana for Dance of the Dead, and you get a +1/+1 counter on it, was a really good idea. And reanimation never actually got much love, even with these really high casting cost creatures, because the high casting cost creatures just weren't very good. Number 7, Ice Age. Ice Age was absolutely enormous. Like a box of Ice Age doesn't even cut into it. If you were to get like a playset of a rare from Ice Age, you had to go to a store. You could not, for the life of you, with 120 rares, actually get a playset of any rares. So a stunted growth. To get a playset of stunted growth, I had to look through like a box of 5,000 Ice Age cards from some card shop owner. I have actually some pretty good memories of Ice Age. My dad took me to Lexington, Kentucky, to a mall, and we sold our cards. The best cards for Ice Age was Jester's Mask and Jester's Cap. Jester's Mask is not very popular. It's 5 mana. You get to replace your opponent's hand with a bunch of basic lands. It seems kind of cool. Like it's 6 mana, kind of like discard your hand-ish, but not really. But like if your entire hand is basic lands, then what are you going to do with 12 basic lands? But play Baron Singer. Jester's Cap was the second most expensive card, if I remember. And Jester's Cap actually got reprinted and some love later on. You get to look through a player's library and remove 3 cards from them. You could also combo Jester's Cap with Hannah, Ship's Navigator, and every single turn you could cap your opponent until they died. The other part about Jester's Cap being good is if your opponent just had an infinite combo deck, you could Jester's Cap 3 of the 4 pieces of your opponent's infinite combo deck, and they just never draw it. But the coolest card I thought was Polar Kraken, which was the biggest card for a very long time. 11/11 trample for 11 mana. Cumulative upkeep, sacrifice a land, comes into play tapped. Ice Age was a bad time because of Necropotence, and the Dark Rituals were kind of an unfair card. Back then, they were called Mana Sources, back in Mirage, and Mana Sources was like, not instant speed, it was like, could not be countered up. So here's Ice Age Dark Rituals. Here's like Mirage Block Dark Rituals. It's a Mana Source, so you couldn't actually counterspell Dark Rituals either. Like a special card. I kind of wish they would kept this, even if it was just for 5 or 10 cards, just having Mana Sources. But anyway, you would have Drain Life, and Drain Life was like a complete mistake. It would make black gain life, and if you look at the color pie, black is completely opposite of white. White is number 1 at gaining life, which means black shouldn't be gaining life at all. It should be delegated to its allied colors, blue for Delusions of Mediocrity or Delusions of Grandeur, which allow you to gain 10 life and 20 life, respectively. And then green's also was kind of worse at gaining life with Stream of Life. I mean, target player gains X life. So why is black has Drain Life spell? Well, they wrote down the name on the card, and then it just had to gain life. It was like, oh, it seems like something like black would do. Eventually, like when World Waker or so came out, they had vampires with lifelink, and they actually gave black lifelink properly, but for many years, people thought black should never actually have had Drain Life, specifically because Necropotence allows you to make this basically black 1, draw X cards and do X damage. It's just terrible. Number 6 is Vanguard. I don't see Vanguard on this. Like, it's seriously not on this. It's not. Where's Vanguard? Someone fix Wikipedia. Just to prove that it exists, I looked up Vanguard somewhere else, and it says that Vanguard was the summer of Mirage. Seems like sensible to me. That is what I remember. Vanguard was cool because you could change your starting life and starting hand size. This is what made Momer Basics popular. Unfortunately, nobody paid attention to this Vanguard. None of my friends or something actually wanted to play Vanguard with me. It doesn't really help that it was like in like 4 different series, and you could get it from the Duelist magazine or like Scry. Well, these were magazines where you could read about Magic the Gathering. Magazines were a thing back in the 90s before you could just look up information on the internet. Number 5, it's got to be Urza's Saga. There was just like this like cycle of really overpowered cards, and the worst of which was Tolarian Academy. Adds 1 blue to your mana pool for each artifact you control, and people thought it was okay because sometimes it would add 0, and sometimes it would add 2, and maybe rarely it would add 3. But unfortunately, if you had an artifact-ish deck, not Memory Crystal, Jesus, Memory Jar decks would be overpowered because your Tolarian Academy combined with like Moxes would mean that your Tolarian Academy would almost always add 4 or 5 or maybe 6 mana to your mana pool. And then you could use these Memory Jar effects with the Time Spiral, would untap 6 lands, one of which would be Tolarian Academy. So not only would Time Spiral would be free, it would be like negative mana. So for a while, Time Spiral was thought to be better than Time Twister, and Time Twister is the 9th most powerful card of the power 9. It combines with Mind Over Matter. Also, Mind Over Matter, you can discard a card to tap or untap target artifact, creature, or land. So if you had like Time Spiral for a Time Spiral, you could like discard most of your Time Spiral cards to just keep untapping your Tolarian Academy and getting like 40 mana. And then you could just like brain geyser your opponent deck to death by just making your opponent draw like 100 cards in his deck, and he'd be dead. So that was Urza's Saga. They called it Combo Winter, and it kind of like paired with Black Summer from Ice Age. Combo Winter was just really hectic. I wasn't on the tournament scene, so I wasn't there, but like a 6 mana card, 4 blue, 2 colorless. Was this just undercosted? How was this undercosted? How was this banned in Type 2 in Standard? It seems like they thought enough about this, like how many times do you get to play 6 mana cards in Magic, but apparently with Tolarian Academy you can. Number 4 was Mirrodin. They printed a cycle of cards that were better than basic lands. Like Vault of Whispers, it's an artifact land and adds black mana to your mana pool. So, look, it's like a swamp, except like maybe you could like shatter it, or even worse, you could use like a Shatter Storm and you could just blow up a bunch of your opponent's lands. So they thought it was balanced like that. What they didn't really expect is if you just had like 20 of these artifact lands in your deck, your Thought Casts would always only cost 1 mana. So you would have like 4 copies of a card that was almost like an Ancestral in your deck. And what's worse is you could have a bunch of Frogmites in your deck would cost 0 regularly. Once you had Frogmites on the board, you could cast Mirror Enforcers, and since you had 4 artifacts for a Frogmite and an artifact for Frogmite itself, Mirror Enforcers would cost 2 or even 0. What's crazy about this is that Mirror Enforcer was a common, Frogmite's a common, Chromatic Sphere is a common, heck, Atog is a common. And when you put Atog in Mirrodin, you had like a deck that was legal in Pauper, and it was competitive in Block Constructed, it was competitive in Type 2 or Standard. And that's just wrong, because you had like a very cheap deck that basically anyone could play, and it was bashing face. So you had like a Pro Tour where you had like over 100 people playing Affinity and over 100 people playing Anti-Affinity. Like it was this sort of like, no one knew what a Viridian Shaman would have to do, because Viridian Shaman could kill lands. So this was like a Stone Rain, but like maybe if you don't use this Viridian Shaman as a Stone Rain, maybe killing the Frogmite is better, maybe it's not, maybe the Mirror Force is better. What do you do with a Viridian Shaman? People were just wondering about this for like weeks on like, we needed a deck with like 15 Viridian Shamans was the general consensus for Magic the Gathering. Like you couldn't fit enough of these in a deck to outbalance the sheer power of Mirrodin. I remember opening up a box of Mirrodin on the day the Mirrodin came out, and I was sorting the box of cards in like a 6-player free-for-all, and I was like, oh, Blue is the most strongest color here. This had never happened before in Magic the Gathering. Blue is just the strongest color ever. You had like Broodstar was just amazing. You had like a 10/10 creature for like 2 mana. Who would print this kind of card? Hogak is like an 8/8 for like 2 mana. So like, yeah. Anyway, shout out to Broodstar. Mirrodin was just had 2 powerful blue cards. It was completely unbalanced. So Mirrodin artifacts were like ivory, and Mirrodin white cards were pearl. So this is like this ivory kind of like white color, and then you had this kind of pearl color here. And they said, well, ivory and pearl, that's like completely different colors, right? Like you would know the difference, unless you're like a Magic player who's used to like sifting through 5 cards a second. You actually can't tell the difference between ivory and pearl 5 times a second. So a lot of like artifacts got missorted into white cards and stuff, and they've kind of apologized, and they changed the color of white cards and artifacts after Mirrodin. But it was just a big mistake. Number 3 worst, I wouldn't say like Darksteel, just for printing Skull Clamp, which is like the worst artifact ever printed. But it could probably go to Portal 3 Kingdoms. Portal 3 Kingdoms was this kind of rare set where nobody could play with it because they just decided to like print it in Australia, and there just weren't that many cards. You would just have to like live in the right place in order to actually play with Portal 3 Kingdoms cards. What was worse is that Portal Second Age and Portal 3 Kingdoms were all banned in Vintage until I can't exactly remember. They decided to unban the cards, and then Imperial Seal became like an impeccable like $120 card. It's a worse Vampiric Tutor, but Vintage players realized if they had like 1 Demonic Tutor and 2 Vampiric Tutors, their Infinite Combo deck would be even better. So because like these cards were just in Australia, they just like tiny print runs and like very high demand being legal. And I thought it was like cool. It's like, oh look, Portal's legal. Now we can play with like Jungle Lion. Like now we can finally have the beatdown deck that I wanted in life. It's 2/1 that can't block. But what ended up happening is Imperial Seal ended up being like one of the priciest cards. I think another one was Imperial Recruiter. Was being just absolutely obnoxious. There you go. Like a $200 card. And all it does is search your creature for a power no greater than 2. And it's for Allurin decks. And Allurin decks could use these creatures with power no greater than 2 and just have infinite combo. All you had to do was get to 4 mana and you'd win the game. And it didn't matter if any player could use the Allurin combo. The chances of having Allurin mirror matches was just next to none. The metagame for Vintage was like 100 decks with between like 1 to 2% representation of each deck. So Allurin was just overpowered, and now you had like a very low print run and very high demand, and you just had overpriced cards here too. Number 2, worst set ever for Magic the Gathering is probably War. War of the Spark was one of our newest sets. For some reason, Magic the Gathering thought it would be okay with this new article called Metamorphosis 2.0 from Mark Rosewater, stating that every single set from now on will now be large sets. And the problem with that is with large sets, there's just a large number of overpowered cards. And this isn't just like, oh, like Narset, part of Veils is just overpowered. It was Teferi. We'll call him 3 Fairy. 3 Fairy was overpowered. Narset was overpowered.
Last and but not least, the worst Magic the Gathering set is Throne of Eldraine. Throne of Eldraine is most popular because of Oko, Thief of Crowns. 3 mana Planeswalker, which alongside 3 Fairy and Narset, just gave 3 mana Planeswalkers a bad name. It's a 4-dimensional card, by which I mean just like Skull Clamp, where in Skull Clamp you could say, well, you know, Skull Clamp would have been fixed if Skull Clamp was 2 mana, or if the equipped creature got +1/+0, or when the equipped creature dies to draw 1 card, or if it had an equipped cost of 2. That would have been better. Smuggler's Copter is a 4-dimensional card. It would have been better if just when it just attacks, you can draw a card, discard a card, not when if it blocks, or if it was crew 2, or if it wasn't flying. Did you see my meme by 4-dimensional? Like, there's limited dimensions to this card, and for R&D, it's just tough to balance these kind of cards. There's no more small Magic the Gathering sets as of Dominaria. Mark Rosewater published in Metamorphosis 2.0 that this is Magic the Gathering going forward, so there's just more Magic the Gathering cards to look forward to, and there's more Magic the Gathering cards that R&D has to balance, so it's just going to be a struggle for R&D to balance cards moving forward. Oko, the Thief of Crowns, got banned in Standard, banned in Brawl, banned in Pioneer. It may get banned in further formats. It can't get banned in Block because Block was abolished because there's no more small sets. But if Block did exist, Oko, Thief of Crowns would be banned there too. What I think is most important about Eld is Veil of Summer, which is like a 1 green mana kind of like blue Elemental Blast, red Elemental Blast kind of card. And blue and red Elemental Blast kind of got reprinted as Pyroblast and Hydroblast. So Dak Faden is the reason why Vintage uses Hydroblast and Pyroblast instead of the others, because of Dak Faden's ultimate. But Mox Emerald is now in a different pecking order in the Power 9. Green finally has its own Pyroblast. If you've heard one of my videos earlier, I talked about 4CC or 4-color control. And 4-color control is based on the 4 most powerful control colors. The most powerful is blue, second is black, third is white, and fourth is red. And green doesn't have much use in Vintage because the most powerful green card ever printed was Fast Bond, and the most powerful red card ever printed was Wheel of Fortune. Fast Bond isn't that good, Wheel of Fortune isn't that good. I mean, it does just draw you 7 cards, but the thing about Wheel of Fortune is that there's also a blue version of Wheel of Fortune, and that's Time Twister. The thing that made red the 4th color in 4CC is because red had red Elemental Blasts and Hydroblasts and Pyroblasts. So that was like the 4th, like you could splash red for that color. But now that there is a green Pyroblast, what's the future of green now? This is completely different. If someone took a 6-month break from Magic the Gathering, they wouldn't recognize it anymore. Another one is Once Upon a Time, banned in Standard. Once Upon a Time, I was talking with some people about Land Grant. And Land Grant was a card that was almost like a 4 of in every single deck. You reveal your hand instead of paying its casting cost, and you get a forest. So the question was, instead of just playing like fetches, just throw 4 Land Grants in your deck, and you get to lower your mana curve. I did the math, and like 4 Land Grants count as like 3 forests. They're like 75%, almost exactly 75% of a forest. So, exactly what was the difference between that and Once Upon a Time? Well, Once Upon a Time also has a choice of either a land card or a creature, and this is like a 98% chance that Once Upon a Time would hit on a typical deck. So, Once Upon a Time, it could be like a 1 of in every single Tron deck and Modern from now on, and it's possible that it's a 4 of in every single Tron deck from now on. It's not quite clear. But what is clear that it might be just physically better than a basic land. Although, if you might notice, there's like a pattern. There's like 3 sets in all of Magic the Gathering's history that printed cards better than basic lands. And one of them is Legends with its Pendlehavens and Caracas. And the second one was Mirrodin with Vault of Whispers, See the Snod, the Great Furnace. So that's it, folks. That's the 10 most powerful 10... That's the 10 worst sets in Magic the Gathering. The first 8 sets, they were kind of bad for a good reason. The last 2 sets are good for a bad reason. Magic the Gathering's never had sets that are good for a bad reason before. So will Magic will survive? Here's my final word. I recently made a perler bead of scarmaglyamine. He's like thousands of beads melted together. If you guys don't know what perler beading is, you take a hot iron and some parchment paper, and you arrange thousands of beads into make a shape of whatever you want. You can make 8 and 16-bit creatures out of it. Maybe I'll show it off sometime in a video. I gave it to a guy, and he was actually scared of breaking it. And I said, well, you actually can't break scarmaglyamine, because if you broke him in half, you could just like glue him back together again. And if you took a single piece out, a single bead out, he would still be scarmaglyamine. It doesn't really matter. So Magic the Gathering, I think, can just live through this. Keep in mind that there is a banning system, and see you next time, and Merry Christmas.
Friends, Wall of Ice Cream has a Facebook page. Check it out and send your fan mail to Gmail or ideas for new content. And see my previous videos at Udioshlet. Not in Wall of Ice Cream yet. Getting to 100 subscribers and I'll change it to Wall of Ice Cream. Or you can come play with me on PlayStation. My username is Wall of Ice Cream, and see me on Twitch, Wall of Ice Cream. I might be there on Sundays. Thanks for watching.